Hi everyone, if you're building and renovating, then this is the place to be. I am Nikki, CEO and founder of Totally Wicked Group, and welcome to our Totally Wicked Q&A. We have once a month a Facebook Live where we interview experts like Tamara here.
Hi.
Tamara is a counsellor from Strong Mind and Healthy Body. I had to read that to make sure I got it right.
Perfect.
So she's here to talk about building and renovation fatigue, which is something that not a lot of people talk about or even think about, but is very, very important.
Definitely.
So if you are building or renovating or know someone who is or is planning to, who might need to know this information, then please tag them and like and share, and then we'll get started. So, Tam, as I said, from Strong Mind and Healthy Body. So you help women usually with anxiety, depression and workplace issues? Yeah, so welcome tonight.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
So today we're going to be talking about fatigue.
Yeah.
So we're talking about what is it, how can we recognise it, and what can we do about it. So prevention, and of course if you are halfway through a renovation or a home build, what you can try and do if you're already in the thick of it and maybe seeing some of these symptoms. This could also be really helpful if you've got a friend or family member that's going through it, to try and identify things for them.
Definitely.
I think, I mean, you can add to that if you like.
Yeah, no, it's just, it's such a big thing, like when we're building and renovating, it's such a stressful event. And it can really take a toll on ourselves, our family members, our relationships, and it's such a big event in our lives, and usually a really stressful one too. So,
and I think it's really important to try and identify that in people, because if they're in the thick of it, they might not actually understand themselves or recognise it themselves. So really important.
It can be really hard when you're going through like a really difficult time to have that self-awareness and hey, I'm not in a good space at the moment. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll get started officially soon. Make sure no one misses out, so like, tag and share. We normally go for about half an hour, 45 minutes, usually. And if you would like to keep up to date, especially with the Facebook Lives when they're finished, you can sign up to our email list. It's for free. The link should be going in there soon, because we have little fairies in the background doing some awesome stuff. And feel free to send in your questions. What are you working on now? What do you want to know about? And of course, send in questions that we can ask Tam tonight.
Cool.
So just a little bit of background about why I do this. So I'm an architect. I've worked in the business, in the building industry for a very long time. And something that I've noticed is that a lot of clients didn't know what they didn't know. So the whole purpose of these lives is to get experts on and to get some information from me, various different topics on things that can help you, so that you are armed with the right questions. And just so you're aware, there's no big sell at the end.
Yeah.
This is just information.
Absolutely.
And thank you to Tam for putting aside some time to come tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Okay, one more thing to say. General disclaimer, especially tonight when we're talking about mental health. If you have any specific needs, please go and seek professional help. This is all general information, just a starting point. And even anything legal that I might say, it's very general. So you definitely need some professionals if you're going to go through this process. Okay. One more thing before we get started. Next month is December, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to call it a fun Christmas special. It's a bit of a surprise. So tune into that one next month.
Sounds good.
I'm going to leave that with you. All right, so the first question is the most obvious one. What is building and renovation fatigue?
Okay, so when we say fatigue, it's basically just, it means an overall feeling of tiredness or exhaustion. And fatigue is a symptom, it's not actually a medical condition. So fatigue can be caused by a lot of different things. Lifestyle factors, it can be a medical or biological issue, it could be stress, such as when we build or renovate our property. And yeah, it's just building and renovation fatigue is basically caused by the ongoing stress. It can be due to financial burden. Relationships kind of sometimes go through a rough patch when we're building and renovating.
If anybody has tried to put together a piece of IKEA furniture with their partner,
Yeah.
that's a good little snippet, I think.
Yeah.
What it could
100%, yeah. So you can just imagine trying to build a house or even renovate a room in a house, so much stress. You know, things often don't go according to plan, and we can be caught off guard with unexpected expenses, or like it's taking a really long time when we're expecting it to only be done in a certain time frame. That can cause a lot of stress. And so building and renovation fatigue is fatigue caused by the stresses associated with the building process.
Yeah, I think something that I noticed in some of my clients is that it's such a long process. If you go from, yes, I want to do something, which could be, you know, yes, I'm going to engage a designer or a project manager and the builder, and it's actually quite a long process until you actually get to the start of the build. By the time you get to choosing finishes and things, which should be the fun thing, should be the most important, you know, the stuff that you actually touch, people just go, oh, I don't care anymore. I'm just too exhausted. I don't care. I just want it done. You know, so if that's you, or you think that might be you, we're going to go through some tips on that. So what are the types of things that can cause building and renovation fatigue?
So yeah, that's just, I guess a lot of times we have an expected picture in our minds of how things are going to go, and roughly how much it's going to cost and what it's going to look like in the end. And sometimes things just don't go according to plan, and that can be a really stressful experience. Sometimes our relationships can suffer because we become very consumed with the building process, and we want to be involved and make sure that everything's kind of going to plan and people putting the correct tiles in or whatnot. I mean, who wants to have the wrong tiles in their new bathroom? Terrible. Other things that cause it, you might have insomnia from stress, like it's always in your mind. There might be a lot of noises from the building process itself if you're still living in the house. Relationships, like I said, when we're under a constant state of stress, we're probably not as good at communicating with our partners or our family.
But it's also communication with builders and tradies and people like that as well, because you're dealing with so many people, especially if you are project managing it yourself. Which, to be perfectly honest, if I was building my own house, I would employ a project manager. Just saying. But you're dealing with so many different people, and they all require a certain different way of dealing with them. You know, some people are really, really easy going, and other people are just like, yes, get in, do job, and, you know, pay bill, done. You know, it can be exhausting emotionally dealing with that.
Yeah, definitely. Like working with different personalities, and it can take a real toll on us. And again, finance can put us under a lot of stress if things don't go according to plan and we have to pay for some unexpected out-of-pocket expenses. That can really be devastating to families. And
I think contractual things as well. If you're not used to dealing with build contracts or quotes of manufacturer warranties and things like that, especially when you think about a whole renovation or a whole build, there's lots of different manufacturers, lots of different suppliers. There's a lot of different things. The only other thing I would add to that is dust, rubbish.
Yeah, stressful. Especially if you have a family member who's got allergies or asthma, the dust can be quite harmful for them. So
that's another layer of
stress.
We have a question?
We have 2 questions. So the first one is, do you recommend having a designer?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I'm just looking at you. Hi, yes, absolutely. I would not do any renovation or build without a designer. And like I said, I wouldn't. I mean, I'm an architect myself. I wouldn't do a design without a project manager. I might do the design myself, which yes, I would because I have the skills to do it. But get as many professional people as you can around you to just eliminate stress. There's a few things I'll add to that later, and I'm sure you'll add to that as well. Some more techniques for that.
Next question. Okay, I'm pretty sure my partner has renovation fatigue but won't get help. What can I do?
Okay, so I just suggest that you just try to be as supportive as possible. It can be really difficult when someone we love is going through a really hard time and we can see it in them. Maybe if you can, try to just have a chat with your partner and just say, hey, how are you going? I've just noticed lately that you've been really tired, or whatever it is that you're noticing. Just really worried about you. Just want to see how you're feeling. And that might lead to an open door. Try to resist, not nagging, but like don't try to pressure your partner into talking about it if they're not ready. Just have an open ear and be ready to listen if they want to talk to you about it, and just have a supportive kind of attitude, and hopefully they might be able to open up to you soon, and maybe you can explore the possibility of just going and speaking to someone else and getting some help with that.
I think too, from my experience, I found removing clients from the actual build area helps too. So even if it's just as simple as going to a coffee shop that they've never been to before, a nice restaurant or something, and just not seeing the mess, not seeing the problems,
the
just
distraction.
And giving them a moment to.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good, distraction can be really helpful too.
Yeah, I feel like they're more likely to actually be receptive to discussing something when they can't see it.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope that helps. Yeah. All right. So, next question, how do I recognise it in my friends, loved ones, or myself?
Okay, so again, it can be really tricky to kind of recognise it in ourselves, because when our bodies kind of like run down and we're in that state of exhaustion, we're not as mentally alert as we would be when we're not fatigued. So just if you can, just practice some self-awareness, check in with yourself. How am I feeling? What's happening for me? What's happening in my body? Also just, and if you do notice that you're not quite yourself, and even things you used to enjoy are just really hard, and you kind of feel like you're walking through mud all the time, go and see a doctor, and just, if you need to, please go and speak to someone else who can help you. That's a sign of strength, not of weakness, and it's so important. Sometimes when we speak to someone, they can help us so much than we even realize we needed help with. And with friends, again, just if you have a moment, you notice they're not themselves, they're really tired, or maybe they're a little bit more edgy, or stressed.
And not like edgy, but
irritable, maybe like they're just not themselves and are a little bit more snappy, or or they're just maybe they're like mentally fatigued, so they're not. They struggle with concentration. They struggle with making judgment calls. Like maybe you're used to having a friend who's really quick at responding to texts and stuff, and they're not quite themselves. Just check in on them. Hey, how you going? I noticed that you seem really tired at the moment. Are you all right? Can I help you with anything? Ask them what their needs are. Don't assume that you know how to fix the problem or how to help them. Just ask them. Remember that something that might be helpful for you might not necessarily be helpful to them.
But sometimes if you recognise it in your friends or family, just asking them those questions might actually help them recognise it in themselves.
Yeah.
I think because, like you were saying at the beginning, you know, you need to check in with yourself, but sometimes people don't stop for long enough to actually do that. So maybe if you do have a friend or loved one, you could be that trigger to help them stop for a second.
Definitely. And again, just come from a space of concern, not of like judgment or anything, and that can be really helpful too. That they just know, hey, you really care about me and you're worried. Yeah.
Do we have a question?
We do. So someone has asked, I'm feeling pressured into making my design choices so fast by my builder, and it's giving me anxiety. What if I make a mistake and choose the wrong thing?
I'll deal with the choice first if you want to deal with the emotion. One thing I always say to clients throughout the entire process, the design process and the build, is get a really clear idea from the start about the main items that are really important to you. So if you want a very specific style in your house, or you want a very specific function, so say you love entertaining, so you want a really big kitchen that your whole family can get around at Christmas time and cook, then it's far more important for you to have the finishes in your kitchen and the size of your kitchen. That's your important thing. If you work from home and you're in your office 5-6 days a week or whatever, then that's the important space in your home. So focus a lot more of your energy on those really important parts, so that the lesser areas of your home, you can make the decisions faster. We do have a few more things coming up later that should help with that. But yeah, if you've got sort of 5 to 10 really important things and you just focus most of your energy on those, the rest will be much easier. Don't try and do perfectionism, because you won't achieve it.
Yeah. It's really good advice. And just with the anxiety, just be gentle with yourself. And it must be really difficult to have that pressure from the builder on you. If you can, just try to communicate to them. And it's such a big decision, and it's not something that should be taken lightly. Sorry, got my words jumbled. So just be gentle with yourself and give yourself some compassion and some time and space. There's nothing worse than we make a snap decision and then we regret it afterwards, and especially with building, because we can take it back, but it's going to take a lot more time and money, and it's something that like Nikki said, your values too, like you have to, it's really important. I think a big part of the building process that's so important is feeling heard and listened to, and being having our needs and our values met.
Absolutely.
It's just so important. Yeah.
That really leads into the next question, which is, what is decision fatigue?
So decision fatigue is basically, it's the fatigue that comes from, like, when we do have to make snap decisions. I mean, there's so much pressure. It's normal to feel, overwhelmed by it. And what do? I have to do this immediately. I haven't thought about that, or I haven't budgeted for that. And it's the fatigue that comes from those kind of situations.
And making lots of decisions.
Yeah.
So that's where, like I said before, if you just have those handful of things that are really, really important, and you spend all your time making those decisions, then the rest will just be a case of, do do I want white tiles or black tiles or brown tiles? 3 decisions. Okay, if they're not if they're not exactly the right way that I want them, or they're showing a little bit more yellow, it's the bathroom. It's not the main part of my house that I want to focus on, so that's okay, you know. Or let's just go with plain white walls everywhere, and then we can do some feature painting later. Those sorts of things, you know. Try and really prioritize those decisions.
Yeah, and have less things to worry about, like you said. That's a good tip.
And I'll mention it later. It's fine. We'll get to that later. Stay tuned. There's some good stuff coming. Do we have any more questions?
No question. Emma's mentioned more date nights.
Yes, more
Oh
date
yeah,
nights.
of course.
Yes.
Yeah, with your partner, of course. Like, or you know, if you have kids as well, maybe you can get like a friend if they checking in and they're knowing that you're kind of stressed. Can you babysit for the night so you and your partner can just go out, have some quality time together, and just reconnect, because the building process can become so consuming and it can really take up so much, not only of your time, but like your energy, your thoughts. You're constantly worried about what's happening with the house or in the house. So you're just taking that time out to connect with your loved ones, your family, your children, partner, friends, whatever it is. Yeah.
And I think really focusing on connecting. So it's almost like it's a no-go renovation zone, so you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I digress a little bit, but I have friends who once a month they have a no technology night.
It's a good idea,
Yeah, and it's basically a switch off. So that's when they'll actually, instead of playing music on their phone, they'll get a guitar out and start playing.
It's
you know,
cool.
that sort of stuff.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like you need to switch off from building completely.
Yeah, and even if it is not all the time, even just once a week, once a fortnight, whenever.
An hour even.
Yeah. Go for a walk every day, just to get out of the house for half an hour, just to get away from it, remove yourself from the stress and the noise and the dust and all the rest of it. Yeah.
We have talked about this a little bit, but I'm going to just see if you want to add anything to what can I do if I'm feeling like this? If I'm feeling the anxiety, the decision fatigue, if I'm over it.
So I think the first thing to do is just really important to acknowledge, hey, I'm feeling this, and acknowledge how it's like affecting you. And like I said, if you need to go and speak to a professional, please go and get help. It's a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. They can provide lots of support, and different counsellors or social workers or psychologists or mental health professionals, they specialise in different areas. So maybe try reaching out and finding someone who specialises in building and renovation fatigue, and they might be able to give you some really specific techniques or points to help with the journey that you're on. I think because self-compassion is so important. Like, just be gentle and kind to yourself, and, you know, speak kindly to yourself like you would your loved one if you see them struggling. Just give yourself that grace and that compassion, and, you know, acknowledge your strength too, because it's hard. It's hard enduring our building and renovation. It's a journey. Like, it's not a sprint, is it?
No, absolutely not.
It's a marathon, and you've got to pace yourself, and acknowledge your strengths, and like gratitude can help too. Like just taking a moment, taking 5 minutes out of each day, and in the hecticness and all the things that are happening, just writing down some things you're grateful for. And it could be as simple as, you know, I'm grateful for my kids, or my animals, or my partner, or I'm grateful that this has happened today, or yeah.
Or it could even be, you know, I'm grateful that I have a home that I can renovate.
Yeah,
you know, some
definitely.
people are constantly on the
That's true.
rental wheel, you know.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you have the ability to make this your home. So celebrate it.
Absolutely. Another thing too, try not to compare yourself to others or compare your building and renovation experience to someone else's, because you know everyone's experience is so unique. And maybe Nikki's had a really good experience with a project manager you worked with or whatnot, but maybe I didn't have that project manager and it's been stressful. And
You need Totally Wicked group. Hey.
there you go.
Yeah. I didn't pay her to say that, just so you know.
Promise. No. Yeah, like, so don't get caught up in the comparison game, you know. Just treat it as a unique experience. And if you are that friend who has had a good experience and your friend, you know, they're going through a really hard time and it's been a bit traumatic or stressful or not quite as pleasant, you know, just have a listening ear and just say, oh, you know, show a bit of compassion, I guess. And
Yeah, and I think this is true a lot with building and renovation. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses.
No.
You know, I mean, even if you are renovating your home to sell, it's a very, very different situation. You know, the house next door, they can do whatever they like. You know, it's your house. It's
Absolutely.
your goal.
That's right, and like that's actually a point I was going to bring up. Yeah, make sure that you are true and honest with yourself, and if you want to have a pink flashback in your kitchen, splashback, sorry, not a flashback. That's
a flashback.
PTSD.
Splashback.
Yeah, sorry, splashback. You know, but the latest trend is to have a
Subway tiles.
Yeah, you know, if you really want that pink splashback, go for it. Who cares if it's not the latest trend? It's your house. You're the one who has to live in there, and you don't want to be unhappy at the end because, you know, you went along with something you didn't really want.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. What can I do to prevent building and renovation fatigue? So, from my point of view, there's a few things here that I nearly said before, but I'm going to say now. So thank you for staying tuned. Plan, 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 and plan some more. So this is very true from the very beginning of the process. Have a clear vision with a schedule, with a budget, but room to move.
Yeah,
So
important.
Absolutely. And the whole process, I think you mentioned it several times right at the beginning, things will inevitably go wrong. So it's all about mitigating as much of that risk as possible so that if every single process is a day late, you're still going to reach your aim at the end. Especially if you're building brand new and you're, say, renting somewhere else or living with family or friends and you've got to sort of move out, give yourself some leeway. Clear budget with a contingency. So if you're renovating, I generally suggest 10 to 15% of your budget should be a contingency. If you're doing anything that's really bespoke or really, say, heritage listed, or it's a really old building and there might be poor wiring, or you're on a slope block, anything that might be a bit dodgy or a bit more expensive, asbestos, add extra percentages to that. You're better off having extra money at the end to spend on furniture. Do we have a question?
Yes, so another question. We have kids. How do we prepare them for disruptions?
Yeah, so from my point of view, there's another thing on this list. If you're doing a big renovation, move out. That would be my best advice for that, because then you're more likely to stay in routine. You're not going to be tripping over all of the rubbish, and you're not going to have to worry about kids, especially young kids, finding screws left, right and centre and rubbish and all that sort of thing. You want to add anything to that?
No, I was just going to say, like having routine or as much stability as possible for the kids, because it's a really unsettling time. So yeah, if you can, like Nikki said, move it if it's safe and you can do so, just for a set period of time. Or if you're still living in the house and it's being renovated, if you can kind of have a renovation-free zone where there's safety and that, like, you can just spend some time together as a family and just, yeah, do some things together as a family that kind of provides a bit of stability for your children. And yeah, just talk to them too. They might be not sure what's going on, or they might be feel a bit anxious because it's a real big change and a stressor to the system. So just check in with the children and see how they're feeling and validate their feelings. Like it's normal to feel anxious or stressed when such a big thing's happening around, and it takes an impact. It has an impact on all the family members.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think too, being a mum, I find involving my son in certain things has been really cool. But with everything that you just said in mind, might be the case of, oh, I've chosen 3 wall colours. Which one do you like more?
Great idea.
You know, so he doesn't have to choose from the thousands of wall colours you could pick, but he still feels like there's ownership of that room.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea too. Yeah, I love it.
Is there an easier way to streamline my decisions and not feel so overwhelmed?
Decisions generally, we as Totally Wicked Group, we assist throughout the entire process. So we project manage everything, and we sort of filter the important decisions for you. So you'll effectively get a schedule from us. You don't have to make those decisions. But when it comes to things like materials, that's a really important thing. And I mentioned it a few times in some of my previous videos, like talking about kitchens and design methods. Inspiration is a really good place to start. So if you go on your Instagrams and your Pinterests and find the look that you're looking for, that's just going to discount a whole heap of choices. And it's much easier for you to walk into a paint store, or if you're using us, come to us and say, hey, this is sort of the look we're looking for. Then your interior designer automatically knows what they're doing and can come up with a couple of different ideas. So you're choosing from 2 or 3 as opposed to thousands. I hope that answers your question. Is there anything you wanted to add to that one?
No, I think you did a good job.
Yeah, I felt like that was more of a me question.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So the only other things I've got here when we talk about what can I do to prevent building and renovation fatigue, there's realistic expectations. So not everything's going to be to plan, not everything's going to be on time, not everyone will get along. There will be skip bins and rubbish outside the front of your house for weeks, and everything will be dirty for weeks. I can't think of anything else. Oh, like you said, you might be stressed constantly and talking to your family members a little bit short, a little bit not quite as respectful as maybe you normally do, or as calm as you normally do. Choose your battles.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What is important? What is something that you really must insist on? Other things that are okay to let go. And surround yourself with good and supportive people, professionals in all different facets.
Yeah, so good.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to that one?
I think too, like practicing self-care and setting up a self-care ritual, I guess you could say. And when I say self-care, I'm not talking about day spas and, extravagant shopping trips. I'm talking about setting aside half an hour each day to go for a walk. I'm talking about have a glass of water instead of that third cup of coffee. Make a commitment to yourself to do something that is going to help you through these really difficult times. And it doesn't have to be something that costs you a lot of money or takes too much time. Self-care is so different for each of us. So what I find is self-care. You would probably laugh at me and go, how is that self-care? But it works for me. And I think you just have to do a personalised plan, and yeah, that can really help. Invest in your relationships. Like, we can lose track of time when we're stuck in the building and renovation process, because it kind of becomes all encompassing. It's all we think about from the second we wake up to the moment we fall asleep, and probably even dream about it.
I have dreamt about spreadsheets before, yes, that's a thing.
Or have nightmares about it. You get another invoice you weren't expecting. It can happen. So another thing too, try to get a good amount of sleep. Like, sleep can be such a really big thing that can help us feel better. So if you're having trouble sleeping, go and have a chat with your doctor, or try drinking chamomile tea before bed. That helps my husband go to sleep. I don't have an issue with sleep.
I don't either. I'm lucky with that. Once I'm asleep, I'm asleep.
Yeah, me too.
But once I'm awake, I'm like, I've got all this stuff to do.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm the same. And I think, like, try to be flexible and adaptable. If plans do change, to the best of your ability, you have to, like Nikki said, pick your battles. And if it's something you really don't want to negotiate or compromise on, stick to your what you feel, and communicate that. Like, but if it's something mentioned before, something that's maybe not as important.
Yeah, so paint colours generally throughout the house, if they suit the flooring that you've chosen, then you don't necessarily have to change it everywhere. You can make that decision later.
Like,
paint's easy to change.
Exactly. Yeah, so pick the feature wall colour after you get some of the really nitty gritty stuff out of the way, and you've had a moment to kind of take a breather, and so, and I think too, like, I think another really important thing to do is to, like, invest in things that don't cost you money, like your relationships, yourself. Like, take time to invest in yourself, and also just take time to think. Tell yourself, monitor your self-talk, and just reassure yourself that you will get through this. It won't last forever. It might be really hard at the moment, but it is going to finish soon, and you will get to the end. It's a journey. Remind yourself it's a hard journey, but you will get there.
Yeah, I think that's really great, actually, scheduling self-care. I have made a note now to actually add that to our checklist so that we discuss that with clients.
Cool.
Because I think that is super important. And just from my perspective, I think you discussed it in that everybody's slightly different.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to identify what type of person you are. So I'm a really visual person. Can't think why, being an architect. So for me, sometimes not having visuals is actually best for me, like actually sitting down and closing my eyes and meditating, because I get so much information from visuals, I just go, no. Whereas my husband, he's more auditory, so he likes the quiet, he likes not talking to people, not listening to people, that sort of thing. So I think really identifying who you are in that spectrum, what you need and what you don't need.
Exactly. And, like, just because your needs are different to someone else's, it doesn't mean that they're not important or they're not valid. Like, we are all unique individuals, and that's something we should celebrate, not, compare and contrast, and then, I'm not a visual person, What's wrong with me? Why aren't I more like Nikki? I'm not auditory either. What am I? Anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Question.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a given that fatigue will happen?
See, that's quite difficult because I deal with this stuff all the time, and I manage it pretty well. But that being said, they're not my home, so the emotional connection is a little bit disjointed. Yeah, I think. From my perspective, I think you would probably expect a little bit of fatigue, but it doesn't necessarily have to be massively stressful. I think. I don't know if you wanted to.
I was just going to say, I think because we're all so unique and different, and there's so many different like facets that can affect whether or not we get fatigue. So it's really difficult to give you a definite yes or no. So many different things to take into consideration, but
yeah, I think it is probably a case of plan for the worst but hope for the best.
That's cool.
Yeah, so the more you plan, the less likely you are to be up late at night, really stressed about finances. So if you take that really big thing out the way because you've planned your contingency budget, you've planned your schedules, you've planned all that stuff with room to move, then when something big does happen, you're like, well, that sucks, but it's okay. I'm not homeless, or I'm not, having to sell my car to finish my renovations, that sort of thing. So,
it's good.
Yeah, I hope that answers the question. I'm just going to check to make sure that was the last question on my list. And would you look at that? It's before 45 minutes. I think it's the first time I've ever done that. Are there any other questions coming in? Okay. Is there anything else you feel like we need to add that we haven't mentioned that might be of help? Put you on the spot a little bit there, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to... It's just so hard because, like I said, I can't really give you a one-size-fits-all technique or approach, but I think if you just develop that self-compassion, communicate. Try to keep investing in your relationships, get help if you need it.
I feel like the summary of the entire thing was plan, communicate.
Sounds
good. That'd be about right.
It sounds good to me, yeah. Sounds about right. Sounds good.
Alright, so no more questions? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Tam, for joining us.
Pleasure.
So, counsellor and owner of Strong Mind and Healthy Body.
Thank you.
And we should be putting some links to Tam's Instagram pages and things if anybody wants to get into contact with her. Bearing in mind you deal mostly with women, anxiety, and workplace.
Yeah, workplace issues and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So if you would like the link to tonight's Q&A, please subscribe to our email and then you will get updates as well as reminders for our next live, and also sneak peeks of our blogs where we have a lot more information that sort of comes from these questions and from our Facebook lives. Give you as much information as possible. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you to Hawthorne Creative for hosting us, and I hope you have a totally wicked evening.